It's June 12, 1944, and Officer Andrew Mynarski is in the mid-upper turret of his Lancaster KB726. There are over 600 bombers heading to strike several targets in northern France, and ahead he sees searchlights picking out other Allied aircraft. The beams snap towards the bombers in the distance, illuminating them so that night fighters can swoop in and do their deadly work. Poor devils. The fighters are merciless, and Lancasters fall in flames. In the cockpit of KB726, 22-year-old pilot Arthur DeBrain tells his men to get ready. "Looks like fighters, boys. Luckily, there's no flak." But his words are still echoing in the ears of the crew when the tail gunner, 22-year-old Pat Brophy, spots a flash in the night. "Light flak below, skipper." Blooms of fire burst below them, detonating just short of their plane. Moments later, a spotlight lands on them, followed by two more. The powerful light sears their eyes and renders almost everyone completely blind. "Hang on, we're coned!" DeBrain throws the Lancaster into an aggressive corkscrew. Inside the top turret, Mynarski holds tight as the giant bomber dives and turns. The bomber lurches as they reach the bottom of the corkscrew, and DeBrain pulls the Lancaster into an upwards turn through the clouds. DeBrain has pulled it off. They have managed to escape the deadly gaze of searchlights. Or so they think. The Germans also switch off searchlights when a night fighter has found its prey. Into the rear, a U-88 drifts towards the Canadian bomber. "I have the bomber in my sights." Brophy, in the rear of the Lancaster, is just getting his night vision back when his heart sinks as he sees the unmistakable form of a twin-engined German plane. "Bogey astern, 6 o'clock." "Hold on, boys." DeBrain is immediately on it and pulls right into another corkscrew. In the back, Brophy tries to get his guns on the German Shadow, but the Night Stalker drifts out of view. "I lost it." "Keep 'em peeled, men." The men scour the skies. Their lives depend upon it. But then, out of the corner of his eye, Brophy spots something moving to his lower right, a U-88 night fighter. "He's coming underneath us." Brophy swings his turret to the right, aiming as far down as he can, and opens fire. Tracers snake out towards the German plane. But the U-88 has been specially equipped with 2 cannons aiming forward and up. With these cannons, it doesn't need to fly behind to attack. Instead, it can fire from the soft underbelly outside of the range of the Lancaster's arcs of fire. Brophy's bullets zip over the German canopy, and the night fighter opens fire completely unopposed and with a perfect target. In the top turret, Andrew Mynarski sees 20mm shells rip through the left wing. The left engines are wrecked. Then a fireball erupts in the dead of night as the fuel leaking from the punctured fuel tank ignites, starting a massive fire. Underneath, the U-88 is merciless, pushing out volley after volley. The explosive shells strike the fuselage, sending shrapnel flying through the heart of the plane, cutting electrical wires and bursting hydraulic lines, causing oil to spray across the inside of the aircraft. Then the mist of oil finds a spark. The inferno inside the Lancaster is devastating. The pilot's gauges go dark, and the aircraft starts pulling heavily to the left as the right engines push the aircraft to the side. "We're hit! We are losing port engines!" DeBrain fights with the steering yoke as the giant bomber threatens to tumble out of control from underneath him. He curses the loss of the altimeter. His mission is low altitude. If they're falling, they don't have much time. "Bail out! Fast!" DeBrain orders the crew to bail and punches in the bailout signal for the men in the turrets. But at the rear, Brophy is asking for updates. His intercom is silent. While the rest of the men are getting ready to bail, Brophy patiently keeps asking for updates. "Skipper! Skipper! Can you hear me? Anyone! Skipper!" When even his close friend, Andrew Mynarski, doesn't answer, he understands that no one can hear him. Brophy starts to feel the warm air coming through the bomber, and he knows something is going terribly wrong. Looking over his shoulder, he sees the growing flames inside the fuselage, flames that are threatening to engulf his parachute hanging on the wall. He quickly steps on his turret's rotation pedal, but nothing happens. Right, don't panic, don't panic. In order to exit the turret, the 2 doors need to be lined up with the rear of the fuselage. But the flames are getting closer, and he's sitting inside the turret without a parachute. The flames are so bad now he knows he can't get through them even if the doors are lined up. His chute is hanging in the main fuselage. Thinking quickly, he manages to push one of the doors open and hook his hand around the doors to grab the parachute. He pulls it rapidly inside, feeling the heat from the nearby flames. Clipping the chute to his chest, he's got limited time to get the doors lined up and escape. With no hydraulics, the doors stuck and the flames barring his way, he thinks quickly. If he can get the doors into a different position, he may be able to exit into the air straight from the turret. Without hydraulics, the only way to move the turret is with the slow hand crank. He grabs the crank and strains to move as quickly as possible, turning it desperately, but his hope turns to horror as it snaps in his hands. He's stuck. Andrew Mynarski drops out of the top turret and reaches for his parachute as the aircraft lurches and shakes around him. He clips it on and hurries to the escape door. He's about to jump when he looks to the rear of the aircraft to check on his friend, Patrick Brophy. Peering through the inferno of flaming oil, and at the very end of the plane, he can see Brophy struggling inside the cramped turret. Something is terribly wrong. Without a second thought, he grabs an axe and pushes right into the fire. He crawls through the aircraft's awkward tail structure, the heat seeping through his flight suit as his clothes start to smolder and then are set alight. Searing pain spreads through his legs, but he pushes on. Brophy is pulling on the doors when he sees the incredible sight of his best friend pushing through the flames. His eyes go wide. "Andy, don't try!" Brophy waves Mynarski away, but Mynarski won't listen. Grunting now with pain, he shoves the axe into the gap and pulls on the turret, using all his strength to pry it open, but it won't budge. Crying out in anguish, Mynarski drops the axe and grabs the doors with his bare hands. He pulls it hard. The turret creaks and it starts turning ever so slowly, but it's nowhere near enough. The gap is far too small. Brophy looks through the gap and sees Mynarski's legs completely engulfed in flames. He's burning alive. "Andy!" In terrible pain now, Mynarski locks eyes with his best friend. He sees the four-leaf clover hanging on his helmet. Mynarski had found it and gifted him to him that very morning. Mynarski screams and pushes on the turret, using all his strength, willing it to spin, but it barely moves. His arms are shaking. He can't bear to leave his friend, despite the overwhelming pain. "Go back, Andy! Get out!" Mynarski hangs his head low in despair, eyes wet with tears. He knows it's useless and nods to his friend. The two men lock eyes with each other as Mynarski backs into the fire. Brophy watches Mynarski drag himself all the way to the door, clothes still aflame, but he doesn't jump. Mynarski musters his last strength to stand straight. He lifts his arm and salutes his friend. He shouts something that Brophy can't hear over the wind and flames, but he doesn't need to hear it to know what it is. It's the same words that Mynarski would tell him every day they went their separate ways after an afternoon together. "Good night, sir." And then he jumps into the dark. At the nose of the aircraft, the rest of the crew rush to escape. At the controls, an exceedingly tired de Brenning watches what he thinks is the last of his men jump. The moment his crew is out, he throttles back the surviving engines and feels the tension in the controls go lax. Without the asymmetric thrust, it's now flying straight, but it's headed for the ground with a full bomb load. De Brenning dashes for the escape hatch and jumps into the night. De Brenning's parachute blossoms, and he watches the Lancaster fly away aflame. Little does he know, one of his men is still on board. Inside the Lancaster, Brophy sits in his jammed turret, awaiting the end. He prays, not for himself, but for the crew, and for most of all, Mynarski. "Hail Mary, full of grace. I hope Andy got down okay. Pray for us sinners." The Lancaster glides lower and lower, and Brophy knows it's over. Meanwhile, Mynarski falls through the dark sky, his suit aflame. The flames spread to his parachute, and one of the lines snaps, followed by another and another. The parachute half collapses, and he picks up speed. He falls out of control as the trees approach ever faster. Mynarski would not recover from his injuries. Several miles away, in a forest, the Lancaster's left wing clips a tree, sending the aircraft into a violent turn. The turn is so severe that it flings the rear turret off at high speed. The turret crashes through the branches and impacts the ground, flinging Brophy out. The rear turret comes to a halt. The sound of burning and groaning metal subsides as Brophy opens his eyes. He drifts in and out of consciousness. Eventually, he awakes. The air is terrifyingly still. Trees still glow a hellish red, and shadows dance in the flickering light.
Is he dead? He notices a lack of pain, but he's scared to move. He tentatively moves his arms and legs, half expecting to find out they aren't there. But he stands up. Behind him is the wreck of his Lancaster, now a pile of twisted metal raging with flames, illuminating the French forest. Incredibly, he survived. But that means he's in enemy territory. As quick as he can, he throws everything he doesn't need into the fire to cover his tracks. Brophy was found by French resistance, who helped him escape capture until the arrival of Allied forces 2.5 months later. Brophy only learned of Mynarski's passing months after the crash. The guilt of him surviving and Mynarski's death haunted him, and he made it his mission to tell the world of his best friend's final acts. As a result, Andrew Mynarski was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross for his actions. This isn't the only story of bravery in a Lancaster. Did you hear about the airman that went outside of the plane to put out a fire while it was